will cover the theory behind OpModes, the different types, and then look at some sample OpModes. It is also worth noting that since this is the first programming tutorial, that watching this video sets you on a path to complete the series using block code. This is good if you don't have a background in programming concepts or don't know Java. If you feel like you have sufficient understanding of basic programming in Java, please refer to our on-bot Java videos instead. If all of that sounds good to you, let us begin the tutorial. To understand how an OpMode works and how it flows, it is important to understand how computers read your code. This applies for both autonomous and teleop. A computer will read your code from left to right, top to bottom. This means that things that occur in higher up code might affect code that occurs later. It becomes slightly more complicated when you start bouncing to different parts of the code or looping certain bits of code. There are three primary ways to control the flow of your program, or what part of your code the computer is executing. They are conditional statements, loops, and functions. We will learn about these a little bit later in the video. For now, in the OpMode, as soon as the user clicks Initialize, the computer will start reading code from the top of the Run OpMode function. From there, it will go down meeting roadblocks such as if statements and while loops that will hold it in certain places until the user performs certain actions. To try and understand the program flow better, let's start by heading to where we left off in the last tutorial. To do this, you will need to power up your control hub and wait till the LED indicator turns green. This will take about 30 seconds. Once it is done, on your driver station phone, open the menu and click Program and Manage. Next, ensure that you are still connected to the hub's Wi-Fi network. Then from an external device such as a laptop, navigate to the local hub address shown on your driver station phone. Then click Blocks. Then click the Create New OpMode button. From here, name the file anything you want. Leave sample OpMode blank and click OK. Once the file opens up, you will see some pre-generated code. Direct your attention to the top of the screen. Here, you are able to set whether the OpMode is an autonomous or teleop program. You can also hide or reveal the OpMode in the driver station app by toggling Enabled. Finally, if you click Save OpMode, the most recent version of the code will be added to the control hub. If it is enabled, then it can be found from the driver station phone, under either autonomous or teleop, depending on which the OpMode was selected as. If you would like, you can create a backup of any blocks program by clicking Download OpMode. This will download a file that you can upload by clicking Upload OpMode when it is in the main blocks menu. This makes an effective way to share or safeguard code. Another thing you can do is download an offline version of the blocks editor. You can do this by clicking Download Offline Blocks Editor when you are connected to the robot. Here you can see me downloading the zipped folder, extracting its contents, and then launching the index.html file. Then I create a new OpMode. To be clear, I could have done this disconnected from the robot or any Wi-Fi network. This lets you to develop code without your robot in the future. You won't be able to test it, however, until you have your robot again. When you are ready to test, simply download the OpMode from the offline editor and upload it to your robot-connected editor. You can also upload OpModes to the offline editor in case you closed it between programming sessions. You can view a list of all your blocks OpModes from the main blocks screen. Make your way back to the file you created. Your goal by the end of this tutorial should be to understand how the pre-generated code that was made for you works. To do this, you will need to print two different bits of text during two unique stages of the program. These two combos are when the program has been initialized but not yet started, print, status, initialized. The next one is after the user clicks play, then print status, running. To do this, you will need to know some additional information first. Here is an index of what we will be covering. If you already know a topic, skip past that topic with the timestamps shown on screen. The first thing you might want to know is how you can print data. You can print information from your program to the driver station phone through the Telemetry.Add Data command. The command can be found towards the bottom of the Utilities dropdown. You will need to provide the function a key and value. The program will then display key:value the next time telemetry.update is called. In our case, the key will be status for both cases. The value will differ depending on where in the program it is placed. Something important to note is that the telemetry will only show up on your phone after telemetry.updated has been called. Another important thing to know in your effort to understand the pre-built code is what some of the built-in functions do. Wait for start halts program execution until the start button has been pressed. OpMode is active does not do anything, but instead returns true or false, depending on whether or not play has been pressed and stop has not been. We can see this be used by if statements and while loops to control the program flow. We previously discussed about program flow and the 3 ways to manipulate it. If you want to know where to place your telemetry commands for the current challenge, you will need to understand 2 of these concepts, those being if statements and loops. Starting with conditional statements, we will be looking at if statements. An if statement is a piece of code that will only run if the answer to a question specified by the programmer is yes. This type of question can only have 2 answers, yes meaning true and no meaning false. This 2-answer format is called Boolean. Programmers can use many tools to convert their complicated questions into simple true or false checks. Here is one example. We can convert the complicated question of how you are feeling today to a simple yes or no question by comparing it to how you were feeling yesterday. Are you feeling better than yesterday? That can be answered with a yes or no, despite it not being the best human answer. Techniques such as checking equality, greater than or less than, or inequality are some ways to convert complicated questions into Boolean questions. If the answer is yes, a specified bit of code will run. An example of using this in an FTC robotics application would be if button A is pressed on the controller, then move the arm up. There are also elif, sometimes called else if, and else statements, but we do not need to get into that for now. The if statement can be found under the logic drop-down menu, although you will not need it for this challenge. Moving on to loops. Loops are very similar to if statements. A loop will keep running the bit of code specified while the condition is true, whereas an if statement will only run it once. It is then fitting that this type of loop is called a while loop. It uses the same Boolean condition of an if statement. There is also a type of loop that simply loops over code for a specified number of times. We will not cover that now. An example of an FTC-specific use case would be to keep running the program while the user has not pressed the stop button. The while loop can be found under the logic drop-down menu, although you will not need it for this challenge. With your knowledge of loops and if statements, you should now understand how the program works. With your understanding of telemetry, you know how to print text to the driver station phone. Put these things together to place the telemetry commands in the correct places in the code. Remember that the telemetry commands will be changing the status from initialized to code running. If you have successfully placed the telemetry blocks, then when you save the OpMode and then click Initialize on the driver station phone, it should say Status Initialized. Then, don't do anything until you click Play. Once Play is pressed, it should switch to Status Running. Continue to say it until Stop is pressed. Hopefully, you learned more about the program flow of an FTC OpMode and some general programming concepts as well. If you were unable to complete the challenge, look in the description to find a completed version. There is both an image and the block code file, which you can upload as described above. In our next tutorial, we will further dive into programming concepts, as well as FTC blocks specific concepts. As always, feel free to leave any questions you have in the comments section, and we'll see you next time.